I want to talk about Alliance Insight. I want to get into the nitty-gritty with Alliance Insight. I want to talk about what I expect from this set, and I want to talk about how it's going to impact the format, because of course it is going to be releasing soon. We're going to have a YCS right after release, and then we're going to head right into national season for Europe. So I want to take a look at the most important things in this set and discuss a little bit what's going to change. And in order to do that, I want to take a little bit of a detour to look at what we currently have going on in the TCG, because I think that's going to be very important, of course, in evaluating how Alliance Insight is going to shape up the TCG landscape. In order to understand that, we have to look at what's currently here. So the best indicator for this, I think, is YCS Mexico City, which happened last weekend. I have the top 32 deck breakdown here, courtesy of Lampy over on Twitter. Shoutouts. So this is the breakdown for YCS Mexico, and this is what we're dealing with before Alliance Insight. And the deck that won this tournament was Memento, which is not that much of a surprise. I think the deck was already good pre-ban list. The deck was not hit at all. A lot of other decks received slight nerfs. So to no one's surprise, Memento and Blue Eyes are still represented in decent numbers in this top cut. It was over 1,300 duelists, so pretty sizable. It showed quite a bit of deck diversity, I think. After this most recent ban list, I think that's a really nice thing to see, because the ban list was a major shakeup to the format, and it really did its job. You know, even though, of course, Ryziel and Malice are still here, the numbers are way down, deck diversity is way up, a lot of different decks being able to showcase their strength. You know, we've got Crystron here getting a spotlight, which is really nice. We've got Kashtira, I think, paired with Fiendsmith. We got Mermail, we got Snake Eyes, which is basically just a good stuff engine pile at this point. Most of the Snake Eyes deck I'm seeing are like Kashtira, Fiendsmith, Snake Eye, Azamina, like a lot of good engines together in a deck. Bestial, Fiendsmith, Salamangreat, White Forest, a lot of different things happening. The only thing that I wasn't quite expecting after the last Forbidden Limited list was that Malice was still going to be taking 25% of top 32 here with 8 decks. I thought Malice was okay after the list. I didn't think it was like this level of good, but apparently it is, and ended up getting second and third place at this YCS as well, only losing out to Memento in the finals here, and that is quite impressive. Even though they haven't won the tournament, they were the most represented deck in top 8 and made it to second and third place. However, how is this going to change after Alliance Insight is going to come out? The first thing I want to look at for this is, I think the OCG metagame is actually a good place to start. And here we have a metagame breakdown. This is the last metagame breakdown, I think, before Alliance Insight drop. Now, not exactly the same as we have right now in the TCG, because there's like Orchist in the mix here as well, which is something that we don't have yet. But for the most part, you can see a picture here before Alliance Insight where the format is kind of diverse. You got Orchist here, Blue Eyes, Malice, Ryziel, Memento, White Forest, a lot of decks that we also have doing decently well in the TCG at the moment. And here's what happened after Alliance Insight. This is the very next metagame report. You can see new product release, Alliance Insight. Malice shoots up to over 25% of the pie chart, and Ryziel also way up. And this is what I want to discuss today, whether this is going to be the same in the TCG, because of course the situation before is not quite the same, right? At this stage of their metagame, the Malice decks were basically at full power, quote unquote. They had 3 Dormouse, 3 White Rabbit, 3 Underground. They had Link Decoder. Ryziel was even hit a little bit stronger than Malice in the OCG because they put X Ryziel to 1. But of course, these are 2 things that we are expecting in Alliance Insight as well, and we're going to get over with those 2 immediately. So let's start with Ryziel, because that's the simpler one to explain as to what happens in Alliance Insight, and that is just essentially just one card. That is Star Ryziel. There's technically 2 Ryziel cards in Alliance Insight, but like the second one doesn't really matter. It's not a good one. Star Ryziel is the only thing that changes for Ryziel, and this is a pretty good card, even though it is not a starter, which is why it's typically only being played at 1 in the OCG, which I think is going to be relatively similar in the TCG. I don't know if people are going to play 2 copies of this card ever. You can special summon it by detaching an Xyz material, so that's why it's just an extender. If you summon it this way, you get the rank 4 lock, and if it is special summoned, not normal summoned, you can set a Ryziel spell trap from your deck. The reason why this card was such a big boost to Ryziel in the OCG is because it gave the deck a higher ceiling instead of more consistency, which is something that Ryziel didn't really need. In the TCG, I don't think Ryziel is looking for consistency at the moment. You just need better ways to get to your spell traps, right? So this card card can basically make sure that you can get your Ryzeal cross online, even if your opponent is trying to hold their hand traps for the duo drive choke point, basically, right? That's been a big deal with Ryzeal, has been like, if you can resolve the duo drive, your advantage just gets very overwhelming. But if your opponent can stop the duo drive, then you're kind of like limited in what you can end on, right? And so this card changes that, because you have two options. You can either make your duo drive, force your opponent's hand trap, and then still go into Star Ryzeal to still get your cross anyways, or you go for Star Ryzeal first, get the cross, and the cross will protect your duo drive, right? The cross will make sure that your duo drive resolves, right? And so any Ryzeal combo from before Alliance Insight can now easily weave in the Star Ryzeal, right? This is a phenomenal summon off of Ice Ryzeal. It's a phenomenal search off of Sword Ryzeal. Basically, you get a free spell trap now in the Ryzeal combos, which is pretty strong. Also is probably going to prompt people to play Ryzeal Plasma Hole, and I think this is a pretty solid support card for Ryzeal. It's going to be a secret rare in Alliance Insight. However, most of the time I think it's going to be a one-off, at least in the beginning. Maybe eventually, in order to fit more Ryzeal names into the deck, because they're all semi-limited, maybe they play more. Because it's not a starter, I really don't see the need to run more than one copy, so I don't think it's going to be a huge money card, especially because Malice is predicted to be the much bigger deal post Alliance Insight, as opposed to Malice P March Hare. So this is just one of the Malice support cards, but it's one of the most important ones. Your opponent cannot target Malice Link monsters that point to this card with card effects. That is like sometimes relevant, but the most relevant part about this card is if it's in your hand as a quick effect, you banish a Malice card from your hand or grave, and if you do, special summon this card. If this card is banished, you can pay 300 life points, then target one of your banished Malice monsters and add it to your hand. So this card is two things. The first thing is it's another Malice name. All the times people were playing like Dotscaper or whatever, so they had more Cybers cards to banish off of like Red Ransom, for example, from your deck, because you would, in the standard combo, you would run out of Malice names to banish. Now you have one more. And even though this one does not special summon itself when it's banished, it basically is still extension, because it gets banished. You can just add itself back to the hand, because it doesn't specify a different Malice card. You can target itself and then add itself back to the hand and then special summon it from your hand, which is basically the same. It's just special summon yourself from the banished pile, but with extra steps. On top of, if you ever played against Malice and noticed how broken Bestials were as extenders and cards to create follow-up, even if you Nibiru a full Malice board, sometimes you would just like start playing on your turn and they go Bestial, banish Whitebinder comes back, draws a card, banishes like 2 cards from your graveyard, 1 Malice card from their graveyard, that one comes back. Like so much follow-up off of banishing whenever, right? This is a Malice Bestial, basically. It can't banish your opponent's cards, but still, it's a Malice Bestial quick effect, so it works on both turns and it repeatedly adds itself back to the hand. So while this card is not a starter for Malice, this card is basically infinite grind game, more names in rotation for Malice, and one of the reasons why the deck is projected to be the best deck post Alliance Insight. Honestly, from what I've seen currently, even though I would love to tell you guys the opposite, I do think it's looking likely that Malice is at least up there in contention for best deck of the format post Alliance Insight, because this is not the only thing that Malice gets. They also get a new spell card, but that's besides the point. It's minor. They play it, but it's not the biggest deal. The even bigger deal is that Malice actually gets consistency tools in Alliance Insight, and that's, I think, the only weakness of the deck at the moment in the TCG is they semi-limited a lot of your names. This new card here is also not a starter, so consistency would be like the one thing that this deck is maybe lacking, and here comes backup ad Ignister, right? Which is technically generic Cyber support, but we all know how that works. Malice is all Cybers. This card just slots right in. If you control a Cybers monster that was special summoned from the X-Deck, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Dark Cybers monster from your deck to your hand, except backup ad Ignister, then discard 1 card. You can only use each effect once per turn. Now, the way this card works is twofold. Either you draw a Malice monster, and if you draw a Malice monster, you have combo. If your opponent interacts with that combo, you just use backup ad Ignister as a phenomenal extender. If you don't draw a Malice monster, this card basically turns into full Malice combo alongside any normal summon. And the reason why that's so broken is because all of your hand traps, like if you don't draw a Malice monster, you've bricked, quote unquote, right? What's likely to be in your hand? Well, it's probably hand traps. It's probably like you have Ash Blossom in your hand or Effect Veiler or whatever, right? And then you normal summon that, you make Almirage, and then you can special this, search a Malice monster, discard it, make, I don't know what the standard combo makes. You can make SP to banish it from your grave. You can make Lizard Doze. You can make Splash Mage to bring it back, depending on what kind of line you want to go for, but you definitely see how it works, right? Like you have two monsters, you have a Malice in the grave, there you go. It's the good old Malice combo. This card is basically Extender and Starter at the same time for Malice, which is really, really powerful. Alongside the fact that this card gives you better plays under Lancia, right? Because you can just do generic Cyber Slop under Lancia. There's also Wizard Adignister, which is the best target for it if you're not looking for Malice. Like if you already have Malice in your hand, you're going to search a Wizard Adignister, which is just another Cyber's Extender. That's 2 more bodies. It's literally just Cyber Slop that happens to be very good in Malice. If all that was not enough to make you think Malice is a real threat after Alliance Insight, they also get a new boss monster to end on if they want to, which is an Omni Negate. Allied Code Talker Adignister on Link Summon brings back as many Cyber's monsters with 2300 attack from your graveyard as possible. Cannot special summon for the rest of this turn. When your opponent activates a card or effect, you tribute a Link monster that it points to, negate the activation and banish it. So they lost Nightmare Griffin, which was a good thing, but still, this card is still pretty bonkers, right? They're gonna end on like this, plus Firewall, maybe Transcode Talker somewhere to make it untargetable and stuff, plus all the Malice interruptions basically, right? So Malice is getting the full package in Alliance Insight. The Malice Bestial basically for infinite grind game follow-up and extension, consistency and extension from backup Adignister, and you get a new really powerful endboard piece in Allied Code Talker. All things considered, Malice is looking to really, really overtake anything else in Alliance Insight. The only thing, Malice is going to have a target on its back, right? Like everyone is expecting Malice to be very powerful because of these cards, and I think there is still some counterplay in Artifact Lancia, of course. The deck will not always play super well under Artifact Lancia, like you don't always have access to backup Adignister, and even if you do have backup Adignister, sometimes that's not that great. The board you can make under backup Adignister is going to be worse than what you would have done if your opponent didn't have Lancia. So Lancia is still a good card against Malice, I'm pretty sure. It's just not always as auto-win as it maybe used to be sometimes. Of course, they can also still play potential hybrids of the deck to make it better into Lancia. Like, I don't know if Fiendsmith Malice is still going to be a thing post-Alliance Insight, but it could be. But overall, all things considered, Malice is looking pretty strong. Charmies are pretty good against it. All of them, basically, is the good news. I mean, Fuva is obviously good. Meowls is also strong, and all of these new Adignister cards and Marcher obviously are summons from hand. So even Purulia sometimes is going to net you 2 or 3 cards, depending on how they have to play. As well as Drolan Lockbird becomes a little bit more valuable, just a little bit. I still wouldn't say Drolan Lockbird is going to be great against Malice, but like whenever they have to start playing with backup Adignister, that is going to be an early search in their combo. So you can droll them very early. They can't add with Red Ransom. They can't draw with Jessie Cat. Like sometimes it's going to be annoying, but still Drolan Lockbird is not that great, all things considered. But the thing about Drolan Lockbird, and this is the thing I want to do next, is the reason why this is a little bit of a uncertain situation for me is because I don't know exactly. I mean, we're going to talk about other things that I think are potentially strong in Alliance Insight, but the one thing I want to bring up first that I think is in contention for one of the better decks of the upcoming format, and that is Mitsurugi. We've talked about the Mitsurugi support as well. I have uploaded my initial reaction to those cards. The more I think about Mitsurugi, the more I feel like this deck is actually capable potentially of rivaling Malice in terms of power level for the upcoming format. I haven't experimented with it enough, but I am convinced, especially this card here, makes Mitsurugi a real contender in the upcoming format. The one weakness, like it's a weakness and a strength at the same time for Mitsurugi. The only real weakness I could think of for Mitsurugi is Drolan Lockbird. Most of its hands are going to rely on searching so much because it's a ritual deck that Drolan Lockbird is going to solo it. On the other hand, other than Droll, it has very little weaknesses. I don't feel like there is much you can do to stop it. If your opponent doesn't have Droll, you're gonna really put up a crazy board with this deck very consistently now. And that's not just because of the new ritual monster. I think think it's also, I mean, the new main deck monster is great as well because it gives you more consistency and another Mitsu name in rotation that you contribute for another ad. It helps you get started. It helps you extend. Great tribute from the deck as well if you haven't gone through it yet. Very, very good card. The new ritual spell, depending on how the deck is going to turn out, I think is also really good. Not because of its effect, but because it mentions all of the Mitsurugi rituals by name. So you can search it with pre-preparation of rights. So that means you have more play, more starters, more really good cards. Like pre-prep is a really good card in the deck now if you play this mirror, which is going to depend on how much space the deck has. You can also still play it with Ryziel for extra starters, extra ceiling, extra ways to get into King of the Feral Imps. But I can also see a world where you want to play like, I don't know, like a build with Dogmatica or all generic ritual support, like maybe Diviner. I've seen people mess around with Manju as well because it's a level 4. Maybe that's better because you can make King of the Feral Imp with it, except unlike Diviner, which is a tuner, level 6. You can play Octodic in it. There's a lot of potential in Mitsurugi, is what I'm trying to say. And this deck has very little weaknesses. And this is the thing. Everyone knows this. This is not like I'm not sharing like the hottest take right now. Like everyone knows that the Mitsurugi cards are powerful at this point, I hope. And everyone understands that Droll Lockbird is really good against it. So I think we're gonna see Droll Lockbird in almost every deck next format. Whether it's main or side, I think depends on the popularity of Mitsurugi. So I think for me personally, that's what I feel like are the quote-unquote obvious effects of Alliance Insight, right? Like we've gone through the obvious things. Mitsurugi, good. Malice, very good. Ryziel, like I think Ryziel definitely benefits the least from Alliance Insight out of those 3 decks. And if we look at, of course, the current situation, Ryziel is already behind Malice. I think Ryziel is going to fall off even harder, even though Star Ryziel is a good card, but Ryziel also does not really appreciate Droll Lockbird. Star Ryziel plays around Droll Lockbird a little bit, you know, like it helps you still play. Ryziel still really didn't love getting Drolled. That's a little bit weird for it. And then Malice is just getting better support than Ryziel for sure here. There's other stuff that's worth talking about in Alliance Insight, and so that's what we're going to do now. The first thing is White Forest, I think, is getting actually very strong support. And there also was a YCS in the OCG that had White Forest performing decently well. It only got top 16, but still worth showcasing. A lot of new support in this set for White Forest. And the most important card, I think, is the Field Spell. I think the Field Spell is actually quite phenomenal, even though it's quite the simple card. It's just another one of those field spells that you activate that then adds a White Forest from your deck to your hand. It does lock you out of summoning Darks from the extra deck, and it has some other small bonuses. But the most important part of this card is because it's a field spell that stays on the field, so you can send it for your White Forest cost. It's a broken concept in White Forest specifically because the entire deck revolves around having to send spell traps for your effects as cost. So it's a card that searches you, its consistency, and it pays for your cost, right? So it's very nice. Of course, White Forest gets more than just that. You get the 2 main deck Diabells now. You get Diabells and Diabell Star Vengeance, which are both pretty powerful as well. And you get some new extra deck tools as well, like a new part of the White Forest end board in the OCG, as you can see in this list as well. They play both of the Diabells and they play the new Synchros as well, because this thing is quick effect, pay half your life points, target a card your opponent controls. Then if another Diabell monster is on your field, you can special tuner Synchro from your extra deck, which can go into the new Poplar, which is a tuner, like a quick effect Synchro on the opponent's turn, level 4 tuner that you can also summon off of the Diabell's level 8 Synchro. Puts White Forests from your grave into your spell trap zone to synergize with other cards. They can be sent as costs, they can be sent for Doom Dragon, all that stuff, and also has a quick effect Synchro into the new Snake Eye Vengeance Dragon, which is also a pretty cool card actually, even though it's named Snake Eyes, but it's a level 12 basically quick effect Flamberge to put a monster in the spell trap zone, which is really good disruption, and then even has a battle phase effect where it like targets a monster and a continuous spell and destroys them. So White Forest is getting some solid support in Alliance Insight. When I read these cards at first, I was like, yeah, this is broken for sure. Especially the field spell made me like, yeah, White Forest is definitely popping off. And it kind of did in the OCG. You know, people are messing around with it. I just think the deck shares some very common weaknesses with some other decks in the format, especially in the TCG. I think Droll Lockbird is going to mess this deck up. Maxi is also pretty good against it, which was one of the reasons why I think in the OCG it didn't pop off completely. For us, I think because Maxi is not a thing, this deck will probably be able to play under Fuva decently well. And just in general, it's just the question, if you're going to play a combo deck, is it really going to be worth to play White Forest? Or would you rather play Mitsurugi or Malice, because those just seem like more promising combo decks. But I do think this deck is worth mentioning and worth looking at if you maybe prefer this sort of playstyle, because I think it's definitely better into Fuva, because White Forest just naturally can set up through its trap cards and back row more without having to special summon that much from the extra deck, which is neat. Also, the new Diabell stuff is like main deck interruptions, right? So like that's neat. Another archetype that has seen a decent amount of experimentation in the OCG, but I actually think Regenesis could be something for us in the TCG that's more interesting. So the way this archetype works, just as a brief summary, I don't want to read every single card here because I have all my reactions to these cards on the Plus channel, of course. The idea of this deck is basically it all revolves around 2500 attack or defense, right? Like you have to have monsters with an original attack of 2500 attack or defense on the field. You can special summon these Regenesis cards and they all have some pretty neat effects. They all create follow-up, for example. Like here, Regenesis Sage, for example, is you can special summon it if there's a monster with original attack 25 or defense on the field, and then when the opponent activates a card or effect, you can send one other Regenesis card to the grave, negate the activation, destroy that card. During your opponent's end phase, if this card's in your grave because it was sent there this turn, you can add this card back to your hand. A lot of them have this sort of effect where they will all return to your hand in the opponent's end phase if they're in the graveyard. So it's like a deck that is very, very good in like a grind game scenario where you throw out a bunch of big monsters, use their effects, negates, I think they have other interruptions as well, and then add them all back in the end phase, so it's very hard to outgrind. This has seen some experimentation in the OCG, but I wouldn't say it's been particularly successful. It was like okay in some decks. I think this is far more interesting in the TCG is because we have a full Kashtira package. We have 3 Wraith Soth, 3 Unicorn. We also still have Fenrir. Fenrir is banned in the OCG. Of course, Fenrir does not have 25 original attack or defense. The existence of Fenrir makes the Kashtira package a lot more attractive, of course, especially in grind games. And Kashtira Unicorn, I think, is going to be a monster in the upcoming format. You look at Malice with an extra deck filled with one-ofs. You look at Ryzeal, you know, Detonator Limited. You look at White Forest, a lot of one-offs in the extra deck. Fiendsmith in general. We haven't even talked about Fiendsmith yet because Fiendsmith is not getting support in this set, but Fiendsmith is still going to be a thing, right? And so if you get to resolve Kashtira Unicorn, you disable like 5 cards in your opponent's extra deck by banishing the Requiem face down or the sequence or whatever, right? Like it just disables such a big part of your opponent's extra deck. Unicorn being like at maximum copies available in the TCG, plus it just being very good in the upcoming format, that makes Regenesis potentially pretty interesting. Like maybe a Kashtira Regenesis deck is going to end up being like one of the more viable decks in the upcoming format. I'm just throwing it out there because I think there are often differences between OCG and TCG. And so just because Regenesis quote unquote flop in the OCG does not mean it's going to have the same effect for us here, because I think these cards are actually quite strong and the concept is not bad. Some of these cards are relatively clunky, of course, like most of them require a 2500 on field to be able to summon them, but they also have like Regenesis Archfiend, which is essentially a starter because it does not require you to have a 2500 on the field to summon it. You have to reveal one from your hand and then it summons itself and then adds a Regenesis card from deck or banishment, which is really neat. And it also adds itself back every turn. They also have a Rhoda. The card is just called Regenesis. These are good cards, and I could see like a Kashtira Regenesis deck. Maybe you even play it with Fiendsmith, right? Because Fiendsmith can also help you get your Regenesis engine going, right? Because with Fiendsmith, you can make a Volzar Lars, which if I'm remembering correctly is 2500 attack. You just use the Engraver as a starter, make Lars, and then you can special your Regenesis monsters next to it. Could be a thing, right? And then you basically have insane grind game, right? Fiendsmith plus Regenesis. Another thing that I feel like is kind of dismissed at the moment, even though I think it is fairly good, but has its own set of weaknesses, and people are just, I think, maybe not overhyping, but people are hyping Malice and Mitsurugi a lot, the new Evil Twin support, because Fiendsmith was left completely untouched. I think this is interesting because Evil Twin / Life Twin are getting a Link 1 that's a Light Fiend, which is definitely relevant, which is a pretty good card all things considered. So I could see something like Life Twin Fiendsmith being a more mid-rangey like option in the upcoming format. The problem I have with this deck is I think it's terrible into Fuva. I don't know if people are gonna main deck Fuva a lot because of decks like Mitsurugi. I don't think Mitsurugi is super weak to Fuva, but Fuva is gonna be in everyone's side deck now that it's more affordable because of Stampede, and also one of the best things you can do against Malice. Let's be honest, like have fun trying to stop Malice with like fair quote-unquote hand traps, like with like imperms and veilers and stuff like that. It's just gambling at that point, right? You're just like trying to compare hands if you're trying to imperm their normal summon, right? Because they've got like infinite amounts of extenders now. Like you hand trap Malice's normal summon, they have more extenders in their deck than not extenders, right? Like any Bestial, any March Hare, whatever, like there's so much they can have. Like I don't think that's going to be the case. So people are going to flock towards cards like Charmies, Droll, and stuff like that. I mean, Droll is not that great against Malice, but like you get the idea, right? Charmies are going to be very good against Evil Twin, but they are worth mentioning. I think it's solid. Funnily enough, most of the decks we've talked about so far probably won't end up playing that much Fiendsmith. Like Mitsurugi and Malice are both decks I think that can play Fiendsmith, but don't necessarily have to or will, depending on how the format shapes out. Because like Engraver is also not a great card to start with if your opponent is on 3 Droll and Lockbirds necessarily. So Life Twins, I think Life Twin Fiendsmith is going to be one of the interesting decks to look at with Fiendsmith. And now here's my personal little bit of copium. In reality, I don't actually think it's going to be super relevant, but I wanted to bring it up anyways because it's my favorite cards in the set, and that's the new Dragon Rulers. This is something that I don't think is going to have a huge meta impact, but a man can have some dreams, okay? The unfortunate part about this because my initial idea with the new Dragon Rulers was to make a Primite deck with them, because in this deck you can basically always search Primite Ether Barrel because it's a Earth Dragon, and when Redox is banished you can search it. And Dragon Rulers, they don't need their normal summon. If you draw a vanilla that's a dragon, you don't care that much. It's not a huge brick, right? You just discard it for a baby dragon or banish it for a big dragon or whatever, right? So that was an idea that I had, but then I realized, wait a minute, that's gonna suck into Droll and Lockbird because Dragon Rulers do a lot of searching. That's gonna suck into Molcharmy Fuwalos because most of the baby dragons are gonna summon from deck, and you want to summon some from extra deck as well. And it's also going to be completely ass into Lancia because all of the Dragon Rulers banish. So I don't know if that's a good idea. I just wanted to throw it out there that the new Dragon Ruler cards are technically pretty cool, okay? I wanted to mention it, even though I don't think they're gonna have the greatest meta potential in terms of top tier competition. I thought the idea was neat, okay? I thought it was cool. I maybe it's just me being an old head and I want it to work more than I think it will work, but I just wanted to throw it out there. It's just they don't keep up particularly well and they don't match. It's just an unfortunate timing, okay? The thing is, the format is like awful for it. It's the Droll, Lancia, Fuva, everywhere. Not a good spot to be in, you know? But dude, this card is very cool. Chasma, Dragon Ruler of Auroras, is a really, really cool rank 7. Basically, the way it works is it sends a Dragon Ruler from your deck to the grave for cost, and then you apply the effect that that Dragon Ruler has when it's discarded. And it's a quick effect. So on your turn, you can send Tidal to foolish any monster. You can send Tempest to add. You can send Redox to revive. And then on your opponent's turn, it can send Blaster to pop. It's really cool. I like it a lot. It's a very cool rank 7 for Dragon Ruler. And Dragon Rulers have like very nice grind game. So in my head, it's a pretty cool concept, but it's probably not good enough. It's probably not good because you're going to get Lancia, you're going to get Fuva, you're going to get Drolled, you're going to be sad. But yeah, so that is, I think, the most meta relevant things you need to know. There's some other things here that are not bad. I don't want to go through every single card today. Like the new Ancient Fairy support is kind of decent for Blue Eyes in particular. Actually, that one I might want to bring up because Ancient Fairy Life Dragon is quite good in Blue Eyes actually, because of one special interaction, which is that it allows you to attack while in face-up defense position with 3,300 defense. And the reason why that's relevant is, of course, because Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon has to summon in defense position, which previously you couldn't attack with it and then tag out into something that also attacks. Now you can attack for 2,500 with Spirit Dragon and then tag out into Ancient Fairy Life Dragon, which attacks for 3,300. 5,800 damage off of one Spirit Dragon, which is nothing to scoff at. That's actually a pretty big thing in Blue Eyes to be able to finish games much quicker. So I think that's worth taking a look at. It doesn't like flip the entire deck on its head or anything like that, but it's a solid interaction. So that's Alliance Insight. All things considered, I'm a little scared of this set. I'll say it because the more I look into it, this set, even though it has a lot of really cool cards that I'm looking forward to, you know, I'm a huge fan of Life Twins, Dragon Rulers, all that stuff, really cool. I feel like it's all overshadowed by major support waves for combo decks, right? Which, like, the recent ban list has done so much good for Yu-Gi-Oh! Where, like, it's weakened combo decks because we've taken away some crossouts, we've taken away some talents, all that stuff. We've preemptively hit Malice and Ryziel, which was really good. The more I'm looking at Alliance Insight, the more I'm like starting to prepare for German Nationals and prepare for the next format. I feel like this set has an overwhelmingly positive impact for combo decks, right? Like, and I guess at that point, it is subjective on whether you like that or not. I think if you're a fan of Malice, you're eating very good. If you're a fan of even White Forest, you're eating very good. If you're a fan of Mitsurugi as well, like those are very strong combo decks after Alliance Insight. Unfortunately, it's a little bit, the scales are definitely tipped in favor of combo. Like there's not the same amount of support for other strategies here as there are for combo decks, right? And so like as someone who personally does not love, like combo is not my favorite format for Yu-Gi-Oh! I would have liked there to be something here that was a little bit more powerful for like mid-rangey control-y strategies. Like they attempted it with the Dragon Rulers support, they attempted it with the Life Twin support or whatever. I'm just hoping that combo doesn't completely take over. But the problem with it is basically the unfortunate thing, I think, is that the counterplay to those new era combo decks is very limited because both Malice and Mitsurugi are like, they're almost immune to the quote-unquote standard hand traps, right? Like your Imperms, your Veilers, your Ashes or whatever, it feels like you're just not doing much in those matchups. You're playing a losing game if you play those sort of hand traps. It feels like, and those formats always, to me, I don't love it when like I'm forced to open Droll or I lose, or I'm forced to open like Nib plus whatever hand traps or I lose, or I have to have Lancia or I get absolutely cooked. That's a dynamic I don't enjoy, right? Like having a combo deck in the format is okay as long as I can handle it with like regular good cards. If I don't have to draw a very specific hand trap for it, then I'm okay with a combo deck being in the format. If there's choke points that I can Imperm or Veiler or Ash, then I'm like, okay, play your combo decks. If the decks don't have those choke points or only have very specific choke points that I can't main deck and have to side deck and then have to draw that specific card, then it's a little annoying. But we'll see how it turns out because at the end of the day, the format hasn't happened yet, and I think there's enough in here that warrants like experimentation. Maybe it ends up being like not that bad. Maybe like Mitsurugi and Malice are going to be strong forces in the metagame, but maybe the other decks can keep up surprisingly well. Haven't done enough testing yet to say, but let me know what you think. If you've been watching this on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed. I hope it gives you an idea of what to think of Alliance Insight or what kind of cards you might want to pick up at your sneaks and all that good stuff. Make sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.